I'm going to start off my review today by mentioning that I feel like today's market does include some incredibly cheap things. Some of them are good, some of them are bad, and I think that it really does a good service to the buyers worldwide for somebody to do a review test of some of these things that are extremely inexpensive. Sometimes they may be a good deal, sometimes they may be money thrown away. And I feel like you look around on YouTube and you see users like VWS Life, for instance, who does some reviews of some inexpensive things that sometimes are a performance surprise, and that's the sort of thing that I think the internet does very well. Okay, now all of these microphones that I've chosen to test today are from a company called Pyle, who's been around for a while. Mostly they make speakers and things like that. All of these microphones are available for less than $15 each. In some cases, less than that. For instance, the PDMIC58, which is an obvious replica of the Shure SM58, is often available for, $10 to $12 without shipping, even from obviously licensed dealers like B&H. And as you go down the range, they can be even cheaper than that. Now, I'm not saying that you would get the same quality from these microphones necessarily as you might get from Shure. You're paying a tenth of the price, and you should have realistic expectations. But at the same time, for something that's this inexpensive to work at all, in some cases, and is in and of itself very amazing. Now, I will go through each of these microphones and explain a few things about them as I'm pointing them out on the screen. And I will be using the microphone that is in the video at the time. So the audio is being dubbed after the fact. So forgive me if I seem to be a little bit off the timing of it while we're talking about them. Okay, now the first mic that I'm going to talk about today is the Pdms E78. Now, looking at this mic, it's clearly meant to evoke the design of the Shure SM57 with this crown at the top, which does not turn like the real 57, but the pattern of it and the windscreen part are both very, very similar, and they've copied some details that you wouldn't even expect them to, like the weight and like the little metallic screen that's right underneath the plastic part, the plastic crown. Now, if you disassemble this, and I'm not going to disassemble this one, I'm actually talking on it right now, but I've had to rewire it where I took it apart too many times and the wires came undone. So I'll put in a picture where you can see what it looks like inside after my wiring. They've copied some other details from the SM57 that you wouldn't necessarily expect them to, just because of the construction of it doesn't necessarily have to be the same, but it doesn't have the transformer inside. But the way that the actual microphone module is bolted to the circuit board inside is just very similar in a way that doesn't necessarily make sense, because you could functionally copy the mic without copying that construction detail. Okay, the next one I'm going to talk about is the PDMIC58. Now, this is obviously, even by model number, supposed to evoke the the SM58 from Shure. It looks about the same, and like the MIC78, it mimics a lot of Shure's construction, including the microphone ball and the weight of it and everything like that. The coloration is the same. In fact, I would say that there's a good chance that if you buy one of the reproduction Shures off of eBay that's presented as being the real thing, that you might very well be getting this, or even, to backtrack, the other Pyle mic. Now, once you remove the ball from the top, you find a dynamic module that again mimics Shure's very closely, even down to the 7 little bumps around the top, the silver screen at the bottom, the circle embossed in the foam, and a lot of other construction details about Shure that don't necessarily have anything to do with its performance. It doesn't necessarily make sense to copy these things. The weight is nice. It seems very well made. It's pleasing to hold. It has not had the wiring come apart the way the 78 did. If you look at the ball itself, it has foam inside to help keep the sound of P's down, but it doesn't, completely take care of everything. That said, I'm not using a separate windscreen on this mic the way that I was on the 78 and the way that I will be on the PDMIK1. Now, once you try to get this, trying to get it screwed back on, as you can see in the video, you got to turn it backwards to find the thread. Okay. Now, once it's back on, again, if you unscrew it and look inside, like the 78, you don't find a transformer inside. Okay, and lastly, we come to the PDMIK1. Now, as you may notice, the level is slightly lower. It's definitely lighter. It's made of plastic. It also came with a cheaper cord, so if you're listening closely or with headphones, you may notice a slight buzz. I noticed that the cord that it came with is much, much cheaper than the other two, and it does impart a buzz. Now, it's also, if you unscrew this windscreen, you'll be able to see not only is the dynamic mic element piece itself different, but as I'll show you in just a second, the windscreen that it's screwed onto doesn't actually have any foam inside, and the metal itself will not block any breathing noises or pops or anything like that. So I'm using a windscreen that actually costs more than the mic. That's where I'm getting to the party piece. This doesn't sound very good. Yeah, you can see right through it there. But to be fair, this microphone cost less than $4, and that was with a cord. And when you look at this element, it looks cheap, and it should. It is cheap. There's, not much as far as extra features here. The foam on top of that does not do a very good job of blocking anything. The on-off switch is there. It's not silent, but it does work. So for $4, that's pretty amazing, to be honest. Now, you put it back together, clearly it's not the equal of the other two, just as the other two are not equals of the Shures that they are meant to mimic either. But that said, to be able to buy a working microphone for less than $4 is pretty amazing. Now, I would suspect that a lot of these end up being used with karaoke machines by children. Now, going back across, here's another look at the 58. You can see, well, when you looked at the bottom, you could see the rebated ring around the XLR connector, which they tell you to look for on fake Shures. And you'll also see it on this 78 when I show the bottom of it as well. That said, I feel like these microphones, for the price, the three of these total, is still approximately $30, including the shipping and everything. That included 3 XLR to 1/4-inch cables. And for my tail out, I'll switch back to the 78, which I happen to feel like is probably the best sounding of the 3. Now, again, it's an instrument mic, just like the Shure 57 is meant to be, and so therefore it's, for vocals anyway, it does need a windscreen. I'm using the let's see, what's this called, the Wintec 5700. That is made by the Olson Audio Group, made in the United States actually. I feel like it does a good job. It looks good, and it's fairly cheap. It's meant for the SM57, and it fits the MIC78 perfectly, and it looks good. Now, again, it's impossible to talk about these, especially the 78 and the 58, without mentioning the Shures. Okay, now I don't know about the performance of the Shures. I've certainly used both of them, but I've not taken a critical eye to it because I didn't want to pay for those myself in order to look at them that closely. Now, I don't believe that these have that sort of durability in them. As I mentioned, I've had to rewire the 78 myself because unscrewing it and looking at the inside caused the wires to break loose. So I don't think that these have the the hammer use durability that people talk about the Shures having. That said, looking at it this way, for this mic to cost $12 with a cable is just really incredibly cheap. It does work. It doesn't sound bad. It may not sound exactly like a 57, but for somebody who's paying $12, they should not expect that. That said, it does cost less than actually buying one of the fake ones from eBay, and it's probably exactly the same thing. So, it is made in China. It has a lot of the things that people tell you to look for on the fake Shures. Now, that said, I feel like these are an amazingly good deal. And so for somebody who's just podcasting or for usage that may never be so physically demanding, these are a good choice. Certainly for adding a microphone to a kid's karaoke machine, I don't think that you could do much better for the price than either the 58 or 78. Even the MIK1, for $4, it's noticeably less sensitive, and it does sound kind of muffled, but it does work, and so there's a lot to be said for that. Now, make up your own mind. Having listened to it, you've heard what I sounded like on all three of them. So while you may not know me, that doesn't tell you a whole lot, but you can hear how they sound relative to each other.